In 1683, the Ottomans failed in their attempt to take the city of Vienna. For the next 120 years, they were on the back foot, losing land and losing battles in Europe. In the 1700s, a new empire had arisen, the Russian Empire, which was a formidable foe and came very close to conquering the caliphate led by the House of Osman. Then all of a sudden, the Russians had to turn their attention away from conquering the Ottomans and defend themselves against a new enemy and a new country with some new ideas fresh from a revolution led by a new man. And the only question was, would this man who had completely upset the balance of power in Europe, would he be a friend or a foe to the Ottomans? In 1798, Napoleon Bonaparte invaded Ottoman Egypt, and he did so for a number of reasons. Number one, he wanted a quick sea route via the Red Sea to reach India so he could team up with a Muslim ruler called Tipu Sultan and upset British interests in India. Number two, he wanted further colonization. After all, France was a colonial nation and colonization brought great riches. Number three, he wanted to export the ideas of the French Revolution around the world, and if other countries adopted them, that would increase the prowess of France in the world. And lastly, he did it for personal glory. And regarding personal glory, he had a nice saying. He said, "Great reputations are made in the East. Europe is far too small." When Napoleon landed in Alexandria, the Caliph of the Ottoman Empire was a man called Selim III. And the Ottoman Empire was a decentralized empire which revolved around the peripheries, giving allegiance to Constantinople. Mamluk elites in Cairo had administered Ottoman Egypt for nearly the last 300 years. And they would meet Napoleon at the famous Battle of the Pyramids. And that is when Napoleon would unleash his modern, technologically superior, well-regimented army upon the Mamluks, who consisted of foot soldiers and cavalry. And the result was never in doubt. It was an easy victory for Napoleon as he just gunned down all the Egyptians running towards him. He was subsequently very easily able to occupy Cairo, and Selim III here in Constantinople had lost the second most important urban center in his empire. He had lost it very easily to a previously friendly nation. All this was highly embarrassing for the Caliph. Napoleon wanted to colonize land, but he also wanted to colonize minds. He wanted to spread the ideas of the French Revolution, ideas such as liberté, égalité, fraternité, ideas which were very alien to Ottoman and Muslim society at the time. He brought with him a printing press and mass-produced literature and disseminated amongst the local Egyptians. This literature talked about things like the rights of man, the man's relationship with the ruler, and also the latest advancements in European science. He really wanted to change the way the Egyptians were thinking. And he got all the local Egyptians together, their elites, and organized them into a legislative body. And before, Egyptians could only petition the Caliph here in Constantinople, but now they'd gone from being administrators to legislators overnight. This was the first time the Muslim world came into contact with a time period known as modernity, and it would have profound effects on Ottoman and Muslim society and thought. And some people would say that it has not been fully or properly addressed even up until this day. Every action has a reaction, and Selim III couldn't just sit there and do nothing. So he allied with the British, and he sent 3 successive armies to Egypt to try and reclaim it. Remnants of 3 armies returned. In the end, it was the British who defeated the French at a naval battle called the Battle of the Nile, which brought about the end of the campaign. Napoleon was stranded in Egypt, and about a year later he left, and the French presence had gone. But it was clear to see that the Ottoman Empire was now behind other states and in decline. This was the first time that a post-Enlightenment European state had come into contact with a stagnant Muslim state, and the results were catastrophic. It also highlighted to Selim III that there was many inadequacies and deficiencies within his administration, within the military, and within his political processes. All these would need reforming. But as we see time and time again, a lot of people don't like reform, they prefer the status quo. So Selim III's reform process had the potential to be very dangerous. Would he succeed or would he fail? Selim III recruited a new army called the Nizam al-Jadid. They were to be trained according to European standards, wear European uniforms, and they were trained by European officials, mainly French military officers. And they were recruited from the Muslim population from Anatolia and the Balkans. So they were very, very different to the Janissaries. The Janissaries by now were a hereditary, nepotistic, militarily ineffective institution which dabbled in the political, economic and social life of the empire. They were no longer the elite fighting force that they were 200 or 300 years earlier. The Janissaries saw the Nizam al-Jadid as a replacement to them and therefore an existential threat. And the ulama did not like this new army because they thought it mimicked other civilizations too much. Selim III was the first Ottoman Sultan Caliph to open embassies in Europe, in London, in Paris, in Vienna, in St. Petersburg. He realized he needed to keep a tab on what was going on and he needed to be a lot more politically shrewder. That tall building behind me with the tower at the corner, that was the Silimiye barracks. It's the place where the Nizam al-Jadid were stationed. And in 1807 there was another military defeat to Russia and the Janissaries saw their opportunity. They used this defeat as an excuse to blame the Nizam al-Jadid but also Selim III's policies. So they forced Selim III to abdicate and they replaced him with someone else from the House of Osman called Mustafa IV, who obviously was very pro-Janissary and promptly had the Nizam al-Jadid disbanded and they were gone forever. However, there was Ottoman elites who did not like the fact that a legitimate caliph had been removed in a military coup. And so one of them was called Alimdar Pasha from the Balkans, and he decided to march on Constantinople with his army to reinstate Selim III. And in the ensuing chaos, Selim III actually got killed, and the Caliph Mustafa IV was summarily executed, and they found someone else called Mahmud II from the House of Osman and put him in power. All these events show that it was possible for a foreign power to take a province of the Ottoman Empire, but it was also possible for a province of the Ottoman Empire to enforce its will on the capital. This was the first time that someone outside the House of Osman, the Janissaries, the Viziers or the Ulama had chosen who the Caliph should be. It was very clear that the Ottomans were weak and for all to see. And the internal ripples of Napoleon's invasion cannot be understated.